I'm sitting at my corner desk in my high-rise office, sunlight spilling across the glass walls, brushing the soft folds of my silk blouse. The city hums beneath me, oblivious to the storm of memories racing through my mind. My phone buzzes on the polished oak beside me, the vibration startling in the quiet of my office. I glance at the screen, his name flashes. David Harper. My old boss. The man who once ignored my ideas, overlooked my late nights, dismissed my ambition as overreach. I hesitate, my fingers curling around my coffee mug, feeling the warmth seep into my palms. There's a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me, resentment, pride, a flicker of irony. The truth is, he has no idea who I've become. No idea that the girl who stayed late drafting proposals, the one whose suggestions were brushed aside, now sits in a corner office of her own making. I take a slow breath, letting the aroma of roasted coffee beans anchor me. The glass window beside me frames the skyline like a painting, but my eyes are on the screen. His message reads, "Can we meet? I think we need to talk." My heart flutters, not from fear, not entirely, but anticipation. This is the moment the past collides with the present. And I'm ready. I've been ready for years. I set the mug down with deliberate calm, smoothing the silk across my wrist, and whisper to myself, almost in amusement, "You have no idea." I remember the first time I realized that hard work alone wouldn't be enough. I was 24, fresh out of business school, full of ideas and energy, and eager to prove myself. David Harper was my boss then, slick, confident, and utterly convinced that his way was the only way. I had spent weeks preparing a proposal that I knew could transform our client's stagnant account into a major win. I stayed late, rehearsed every slide, memorized every statistic, and yet, when I walked into that glass-walled conference room, he barely looked at me. "You're ambitious," he said, a faint smirk tugging at his lips, "but maybe aim lower next time." My chest tightened, my hands trembled slightly as I held the folder against my body. A lump rose in my throat, and I fought back tears, not because I doubted my ability, but because no one else seemed to see it. The sting wasn't just humiliation, it was the silent message that my effort, my ideas, my very drive, didn't matter. After that meeting, I went to my grandmother's small apartment, the one she had lived in for decades, filled with books, plants, and the comforting scent of brewed tea. She noticed my furrowed brow and the way my hands shook. Wordlessly, she handed me a thin, leather-bound notebook. "Write it down," she said softly. "Your ideas, your goals, your plans. Don't wait for anyone to notice you. Build your own path." Her voice was calm, unwavering, and in that moment, I felt the first spark of determination that no one could extinguish. That night, I sat on her worn sofa, pen in hand, heart pounding with equal parts fear and resolve. I wrote down my vision, not for validation, not for approval, but for myself. I would prove that talent ignored today could become power tomorrow. I would no longer depend on anyone else to define my worth. By morning, I had made a decision. I would work tirelessly, not for recognition from those who dismissed me, but to create something that was undeniably mine. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet, fierce promise formed. I would not just succeed. Someday, I would rewrite the rules entirely. I started small, barely making enough to cover rent, but every late night at my cramped apartment felt like progress. I pored over market research, read every book I could get my hands on about entrepreneurship, and practiced pitches in front of the mirror until I could recite them without shaking. Every rejection I received stung, but each one became a lesson, a stepping stone towards something greater. It was during those early months that I met Clara Bennett, a seasoned marketing strategist who recognized something in me she hadn't seen in years. "You've got fire," she said, handing me a cup of coffee at a crowded cafe. "But fire without direction just burns itself out. Let me help you build a ladder." Clara became my mentor, guiding me through contracts, client negotiations, and the delicate art of balancing confidence with humility. Her faith in me was a stark contrast to the dismissive glances I had endured at the office I once called mine. Days bled into nights. My apartment became both sanctuary and battleground. I learned to code simple analytics tools, manage social media campaigns, and pitch ideas that once would have been laughed out of conference rooms. There were moments of doubt, when my bank account dipped dangerously low, when I questioned if the sacrifices were worth it, but each small win pushed me forward. The first client I landed paid more than I had earned in a month at Harper & Company. The first profitable campaign I ran felt like a private triumph, a quiet victory over the doubt that had shadowed my younger self. I kept my growing success mostly secret. On social media, I posted carefully curated snapshots, a team lunch here, a conference selfie there, but nothing that revealed the scale of my achievements. I wanted the satisfaction of building something that was wholly mine, without the pressure of external validation. The company slowly took shape under my hands, a modest office in the city, then a larger space with floor-to-ceiling windows and art I picked out myself. Every decision was deliberate, every step a testament to the hours I had spent alone, learning, failing, and rising again. I often thought about David, how he had dismissed me, how casually he had underestimated my ambition. But I didn't want revenge. I wanted proof. Proof that recognition doesn't come from waiting for someone else's approval, that effort unseen can become a quiet, unstoppable force. Every new client, every milestone, was a reminder that my journey wasn't defined by his indifference, but by my own persistence. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a plan quietly took shape, a way to show, not through anger or confrontation, but through undeniable achievement, that the woman he had ignored was now the one in control. The fire Clara had seen that day in the cafe had turned into a steady, unwavering blaze, and it was ready to illuminate the world I was about to command. The day he walked into my office, I could feel the tension in the air before he even stepped through the glass doors. David Harper, once so confident, now seemed unsure, slightly off balance. He expected to find the same overworked, hopeful woman he had once dismissed, hunched over spreadsheets or nervously pitching ideas that no one would take seriously. I greeted him with a calm smile, gesturing to the plush leather chairs in front of my desk. The office was light-filled, framed with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Modern abstract art adorned the walls, and personal touches, books I had loved, photos of moments I cherished, awards earned through sleepless nights, were carefully placed around the room. Everything spoke of success, elegance, and quiet power. He paused mid-step, scanning the room. His eyes flickered from the gleaming desk to the carefully curated shelves, lingering on a bronze statuette that commemorated the company's first major deal, a deal I had closed on my own. For a moment, I let the silence stretch, letting him absorb the weight of what he saw. "I assume you've seen the news," I said finally, my voice steady, but carrying the undercurrent of satisfaction I could barely contain. "I acquired Harper & Company last quarter." The words landed like a thunderclap. His jaw tightened, and his hands clenched slightly at his sides. "You what?" he managed, disbelief cracking his usual composure. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my legs deliberately. "I own it. Every asset, every client, every decision. The company you thought would always be yours to control is now under my leadership." David swallowed hard, and I could see the flicker of shame and recognition in his eyes, the realization of every time he had brushed me off, the countless hours of effort he had dismissed. I don't understand," he stammered, almost pleading. I smiled, almost gently. "It's simple. You ignored my effort, my ideas, my talent. So, I created my own path. I learned, I grew, I built something that no one could take from me. And now, here we are." He looked around again, taking in the office, the staff who entered discreetly to greet me, the thriving energy of a company humming under my command. He had underestimated me once. Now, he was facing the reality that the woman he overlooked was the one steering the ship. I could see his mind racing, imagining the decisions he had once made without me, and the fortune he thought he would retain unchallenged. "And you didn't need anyone's help?" he asked, his tone shifting to curiosity tinged with awe. I shook my head. "I didn't need your approval. I didn't need your acknowledgement. All I needed was belief in myself and the courage to act on it. That's how leaders are made, David. He sank into the chair across from me, finally silent, his usual arrogance replaced with the stunned awe of someone confronting a truth he had never anticipated. I let him sit there, absorbing every detail, the office, the company, my composure, the quiet authority that radiated from me. And in that moment, the transformation was complete. The girl he had ignored, the employee he had underestimated, was no longer invisible. She was the one who held the reins. The power dynamic had shifted entirely, and I watched with quiet satisfaction as David Harper finally understood the price of ignoring talent and the strength of a woman who refused to be dismissed. Sitting behind my desk, I finally felt the full weight of control, the kind that comes from years of determination, persistence, and learning to stand alone. David was silent across from me, his pride battered but his curiosity intact. I could see that he was slowly processing that the woman he had underestimated was no longer someone he could dismiss. "I'll give you a choice," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You can stay and you can work under me, or you can walk away. But if you choose to stay, there are conditions." He looked startled, like a man unaccustomed to being told what to do. "Conditions?" he echoed, almost incredulously. "Yes," I said, leaning forward, clasping my hands. "First, honesty. No more cutting corners, no more favoritism, no more dismissing people because you think you know better. This company thrives on talent, not ego." He nodded, swallowing hard, and I continued. "Second, accountability. Every decision you make has consequences, and you will own them. There will be no hiding behind authority or charm. Mistakes happen, but excuses don't get you anywhere." "Understood," he said quietly, his voice lower than usual. "Third," I went on, "you must actively support the growth of your team, not just your own image. I want mentorship, guidance, real collaboration. Those who have potential will rise, and you will help them, or you step aside. No exceptions." David's gaze dropped to the desk. There was discomfort in his stance, but I could tell he was listening. I smiled slightly, not cruelly, but with the strength of someone who had walked through fire and emerged unscathed. "And fourth," I added, "personal growth. This means learning humility, valuing effort, and respecting the people around you. This isn't just about business. It's about becoming someone you can be proud of." I paused, letting each word settle, like a weight on the room. The power was mine now, but I wasn't here to crush him. I was here to set terms that would make him better and the company stronger. I was offering him a chance, not just to survive under my leadership, but to grow into a professional capable of seeing the value in others, as I had been forced to learn on my own. He looked up finally, a flicker of understanding passing across his face. I never realized," he said almost humbly, "how much I underestimated you." "That's exactly the point," I replied softly but firmly. "Underestimation has consequences. Now you have a choice: adapt, grow, and contribute, or step aside. Either way, the company moves forward." I leaned back in my chair, fingers lightly touching the leather, feeling the quiet authority that only comes from overcoming every obstacle that once seemed insurmountable. The room was filled with tension, yes, but also with the possibility of transformation. Power was no longer just a word. It was tangible, earned, and wielded with clarity and intention. For the first time, I truly realized that the woman who had once been ignored was now in complete control, shaping not just a company, but the people around her, and that power was hers to use wisely. Weeks passed, and I watched the subtle, almost imperceptible shifts in those around me. David adjusted, hesitantly at first, then with more confidence. He began attending mentorship meetings, genuinely listening to younger employees, taking notes, and offering guidance without the shadow of ego that had once defined him. It wasn't immediate transformation, but change, real change, was happening. The team thrived. I walked through the office one afternoon, watching a junior associate pitch a bold idea confidently, knowing they would be heard. I smiled to myself, recalling my own days of being overlooked, feeling that familiar lump in my throat turn into quiet satisfaction. The company was no longer just a reflection of my ambition. It was a reflection of resilience, effort, and the courage to rise despite being ignored. I often returned to my grandmother's leather-bound notebook, now worn and soft from years of use. Flipping through it, I saw the sketches, notes, and plans I had written late at night when the city slept. Her words echoed in my mind. Build your own path. They had guided me through the darkest moments, reminding me that recognition from others was optional, but belief in myself was mandatory. Sitting at my desk one evening, I looked out over the skyline, the golden sun dipping behind the city buildings. My thoughts drifted to the journey that had brought me here, the rejection, the sleepless nights, the mentors, the small victories that had quietly accumulated into something undeniable. I felt a deep, grounding sense of pride, not just for the company I had built, but for the woman I had become. Capable, resilient, and unapologetically independent. David walked by, pausing to nod in acknowledgement. There was a quiet respect now, mutual and earned. I didn't gloat, I didn't need to. The power I held was not just in ownership, but in knowing I had stayed true to myself while others had doubted me. I picked up the leather-bound notebook once more, tracing the edges with my fingers. You have no idea, I whispered to the empty office, a soft smile curving my lips. And this time, it wasn't for him. It was for me. I closed it gently, standing tall, ready to face the future on my own terms. A woman who had once been ignored had not only claimed what was hers, but had done so with grace, strategy, and unwavering confidence. And as I gazed out at the city lights flickering to life, I knew the truth in my heart. Strength isn't given, it's earned. And I had earned every moment,